Ink bleed! Ink bleed is all the rage. So many designers talking about ink bleed, and they're usually talking about it from a feature within Photoshop. Not a whole lot of people talking about it within Affinity, and I think I know why. Let's go. What's going on, everybody? My name is Dave Conry, and I'm an artist and designer based in Southern California, and I'm here to show you a technique that you've probably seen a million times, but never once in Affinity Photo. I don't know, maybe you have, but I haven't seen anybody talking about it, so I'm gonna talk about it so now you know why nobody talks about it. First, what is ink bleed? It's when you take an image like you see here on the screen and turn it from this into this. Pretty cool, right? I think it's kind of cool. I dig it. You see this a lot in t-shirt design. You do see it in some poster design. And I appreciate it. It's literally part of this design right here, with some other touches, of course. Now, there's a few ways to achieve this effect, but the simplest is to use the field blur filter. I have to say that slow because I keep stumbling over it. Field blur filter, just like that. You do this and it comes up and you make some adjustments, which we'll talk about in a second. Now, this image that you see here, this is pulled from my Textures Graphic Assets Pack that you can buy on my website, link in the description. You can buy if you want to, but you don't have to. You can use regular old type for this right here. I've got Helvetica condensed because you know how I roll with the Helvetica. You can use regular type. You can even use images. If I go up here, you see this young, beautiful lady right here. If I go and do a little bit of field blur, some expression upon her, and if you push it like we're gonna push it, you can do some really wild things. For our purposes, we're just gonna use this image real quick, and then you can go experiment to your heart's content. This process is pretty simple, and there's a lot of opportunity to do some really cool stuff, but it really just you just gotta get your hands dirty. But let's jump into it. Something to note is that you need to have some sort of background. The white image back there is actually a standalone image, and I've got a background fill right now of black. You can have your layers flattened, you can have them standalone like that and then have a background layer, but you must have some sort of background layer in order for this to work, otherwise the filter is just not going to show through. I'm going to be using the live field blur filter. You can also use the regular field blur filter, but if you do, it needs to be applied to a rasterized image. You bring in a photo or you bring in some type, you're going to need to rasterize it first in order for this one to work. That's why I'm working with the live filter. Obviously it's going to take a little bit more access memory, the hard drive space, whirring of the fan, you know how we roll, but it gives you the opportunity to get some interesting results, and you can experiment and throw different things underneath it and just play with it all you want. So now when I open up the filter, you get this dialog box, and right there in the middle, you see that little circle right there? That is your starting point, and you get to apply these little dots in random places wherever you want. I'm just gonna go ahead and place 3. I'm gonna place one right there where I had it before with my other one. I'm gonna place one right up here at this side of the P. The things to understand with this dialog box is this global radius is how much blur you will affect the entire layer. Now this is going to get changed a little bit as you mess with those different nodes, but this is the maximum amount of blur that you're going to get. So if I left this here at 16 pixels, 17 pixels, that's as far as the blur will ever get. No matter how much I try to make it different, it's not gonna get any more blurry than that. So we're just gonna push it all the way to 100 pixels just to make it really nasty gritty. And I'm gonna start with this middle one right here, and you're gonna click it and you're gonna make sure it's active, and I'm gonna zoom in here so you can see what I'm talking. Well, I guess zooming in doesn't help. I was gonna zoom in there and help you out, but it doesn't really change anything. Also to note, if you can see as I'm off the node, I can drag and my global radius will change as I do that, which is cool, except for if you're trying to touch into one of these nodes and you slightly miss it, it like, what's going on? You don't want to do that. So keep your global radius where you want to go and make sure you click right there in the middle of that circle. Also, it's important to note that if you ever kind of like do something, like if you did this and like, oh no, and then you go, reaching for Command Z, don't do that. It doesn't just erase your last movement within the filter, it erases everything you've done in the filter so far and will take you back to the beginning. Don't hit Command Z, just go back up here to global radius and move that sucker back to where it belongs. So I click in there, and now I'm gonna take that one all the way down on my selected handle. The selected handle level is giving me how much blur I want for that particular handle, and again, it will take me all the way to 100 if I want to, and it's going to be 100% of whatever the global radius is, but I can take it down to 50 if I want, or whatever you feel is best. But this one is our control node, so I'm gonna take it all the way down to 0, and then I'm gonna take the selected handle power all the way to 0.5. That's as far as it'll go. That'll make more sense in just 1 second, but I wanted to show you how that works. Now let's go over here and touch up on this one. Now the selected handle level is all the way up to 100%. As I move the selected handle power, this is weird. It's kind of backwards to me because I would think that if you go further to the right that you would get more extreme, and if you go further to the left you'd get less, but it's actually the opposite. So as I start to pull it back down, then you start to see the blur take effect. And as it starts to get down closer, it's like exponential. The lower you go, it's going twice as much every single time you do that. But as you can see, it's starting to bleed all the way out into here. Look at this edge of the P as I do this. See how it's nice and crisp over here right now because my control node is sitting over here trying to hold on to everything it possibly can. And so then I'm taking this one and I'm like, I'm gonna push in as much as I can, and it starts to get blurrier and blurrier, blurrier. You may not necessarily want that. Or maybe you like it how it's appearing up in here, but you're not quite stoked on that. We can fix that too in just a minute. So we'll leave it there. Go back over to this one and do the same thing. Got it all the way up to 100%. Just push in, keeping aware of what else is going on around me. I'm looking at this edge here as I'm doing this because I don't want it to go quite that far. See, it's starting to blur up a little bit. So I'm just gonna leave it just like that. Now let's go back up here and address this blurriness here. Really simple. All I need to do is place another node, bring that all the way back down to 0, and bring that selected handle power down like that. Now it's not gonna be perfect. The way this works isn't quite perfect. You're not gonna get super crisp all of a sudden. And this is why I think in Affinity, it's not quite as good. Photoshop does this a little bit more elegantly than Affinity does. Photoshop, you don't have this kind of extended control, but I believe that they handle it better overall. But it still handles pretty good, and sometimes the constraint of not having it just perfect gives you an opportunity to make new things happen. Close the dialog box. We've got the bleed over here and the bleed over here, trying to hold on to everything I can over here. Maybe this is where you wanna keep it, maybe not. I'm thinking I want to push it a little bit further, so I'm going to click on this one. Again, go slow. I'm going to push that one a little bit, and I'm going to push this one a little bit. Now here's the other thing. I can move this handle and kind of experiment with the look that I'm trying to get. And maybe it looks better over here between these two. Because if you're thinking about ink bleed, really the places that you should be pushing this is where the ink gets to kind of come closer together, where ink might gather as if it was printed. Like maybe it would happen down in here. As I can see, I've already got a little bit, so I'm gonna click another node down there. It's like starting to bleed in here, so maybe I'm adding another node and I'm taking those edges down. One over here in this corner too. That just kind of tightens it up a little bit. Is it perfect? No, but it helps. It helps keep the continuity of certain things. Where do you take it from here? The most simplest way to do anything cool, like I was doing before, is a gradient map. So if I go over here to my adjustment panel and I click on one of my prefab gradient maps, you don't necessarily have all these, you may have some. I have a few already set up. You can make your own by going here to layer, new adjustment layer, and then you go down to, let's say, gradient map right there. You can also do it right down here in the layer menu by clicking that half white, half black image down there and then pull it up from there. Don't use the stock one. I don't know who over at Affinity decided that this would have been a good idea, but this is horrible. Don't ever use this. So the first thing I always do is I change the first color. The way to look at this is that this side of your gradient maps, this is going to be your darkers, your shadows, which is kind of weird because you would think that it would be darker. And then this one over here would be your highlights, and then this is your midtone. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit reverse, start from there, click that, change that color to a darker blue, even maybe almost a black, but not quite. I'm going to change this one. I did it before purple, but yeah, let's do an aqua marine right there in the super highlight, and then go back here to the first node of this one and click that, and then bring it way down to a light color. You can go white. I kind of like to give a little bit of a tint. It just gets the blend a little bit better if you give it some tint. And if I wanted to, I could save that. I could just add a preset, call it the gap, just for our purposes. Now I've got a preset, which I can find by going over to, if I close this, I go over to my adjustment panel, and you can see I've got it right there. So I can apply that one if I wanted to, or I can apply this one, or I can apply that one again, or that one, or that one, or that one, but go back to that one. If I take that one and you can see the white on black, or black on white, that's your ink bleed right there. And maybe you like that color, and maybe you don't. Maybe you like it this way instead, and maybe you're not quite happy with how gritty it needs to be, so you go and add a new layer, and you're gonna go to fill. It's already at 50% gray because that's what it should be. And you're gonna go up here to filters, you're gonna go noise and go add some noise, and then switch that to overlay. And if I zoom in, gritty gritness. See? Look at that. You can even more grit. Command F and grit the grittiness even grittier. And you can go nuts crazy with that. Dear Gap, you should hire me to make your t-shirts. Speaking of t-shirts, if you want to see how I made this one, it's in that video right there, okay? Hit the like button if you enjoyed this. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'll see you next time. Be good today, be even better tomorrow. See ya.